Sick Harrison Price for Thursday, April 10th, 2025, coming to you from the Nation Network studio, built by Arbor Lee here at the Historic Wall Center. In this program, a presentation of Bet365. Matt Sick Harrison alongside Blake Price, four-time Juno Award winner Mike Rogerson, hitting switches, conducting things. We have a big program planned for you. On the day after the Vancouver Canucks are mathematically eliminated from the Stanley Cup playoffs, we're accustomed to this day, of course, over the last decade plus. We're here to help.
The eighth time in 10 years. The eighth time.
Be the shoulder to cry on. Give you some rationalization, some reasoning to everything that happened during this tumultuous 24-25 campaign. And we will start with the Surrey Mitsubishi poll question, because today is the day where you look back and say, okay, what went wrong? Who's responsible? And so we're asking you, who deserves the most blame for this season? Management, coaches, players, or just one player? And you define that player as you see fit. I can think of a couple of candidates.
Could be one guy for one person, could be one guy for another person.
Such was the storyline and the narrative that will forever be attached to this season. People decamped. You're an Elias Pettersson guy, you're a JT Miller guy.
Yep.
It's kind of like, are you a Tiger guy or a Phil guy, a Federer guy or a Novak? Like, that's what was wrought here this year. That's what it came down to.
Yep.
When infighting, the likes of which you rarely see and hear about with a professional sports franchise, got laid naked, blatant, before the public. So vote at the Sick Harrison Price X and YouTube channels. Blake Price, where did you cast your ballot?
Just one player.
Did you really?
Yes.
Care to specify?
Yeah, it's, I'm going to stay out of the dressing room stuff. Like, is that the reason for why Elias Pettersson didn't perform? What level of that, to what degree did that impact his on-ice performance? But ultimately, and does management have a role in quelling that? Coaches have a role? Keep all of that. I'm just dealing with brass tacks, what we know. Elias Pettersson did not perform to the level that we have seen over the last couple of seasons in a Canucks uniform. And he doesn't need 100 points. But if Elias Pettersson is an 88-point player, the Vancouver Canucks are in the playoffs. Like, there's, like, unequivocally, emphatically, they are 7 to 10 points better than they are right now. I have no doubts in my mind about that. And that is about the execution of one player. So
that's a lot to lay at one player's feet.
And as I said, the reasons,
it is a team game.
The reasons why he's not there, you can point to this, that, and there. But ultimately, one guy's point totals dropped precipitously. If that one guy is where he has been, they are in a profoundly different place. So that's why I said just one player. And again, that is not to blame him in the sense of
in isolation.
This was all up to him. He is but a human.
Do you?
But ultimately,
we had Gillis in here a couple of months ago, and he talked about when you have a talent like Elias Pettersson, it's up to you as an organization to support him and properly surround him. And the Vancouver Canucks clearly failed to do that. So is there a portion of the blame that goes to management, the coaching staff?
None of this poll question is black and white.
Of course,
there's shades of gray everywhere here.
As in life.
Yes. So Yeah, absolutely. As I say, how the coaches dealt with the issue, how the management group dealt with the issue in the dressing room,
but not enough of the pie for you to vote for one of these other
right?
Categories.
It's just so clear and evident that if that one player performs up to his ability, the entire season changes.
You said 85 points?
Yeah, I said 88, but 85.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I ask you if that is too big an ask, given the number of games he's going to wind up missing? He's playing 60. He's played 64 games. I don't think he's returning, but even if he were to at this point, it'd be 60.
Yeah. So 70 points. So if he's at 70 points in 64
we asked
games,
Jeff last week, if he's 65 instead of 45, does that make the difference? But
yeah.
65 isn't enough for you. You think it wouldn't have needed to be in this?
No.
Okay.
No. 20 more points by Elias Pettersson is easily a 5 to 8 point difference in the standings in my mind.
Okay.
They played enough close 1-goal games here where if he performs and gets that means involvements in 20 more goals. They're in the playoffs.
That is as strong as you have been on this topic and on a poll question that I can remember. Mike, clip it. It's clipped. I cast my vote for management. And I sure hope when Patrick Allvin, at the very least, takes the podium next week for the Canucks postmortem, that management takes accountability and responsibility. They ask for that from players. The coaching staff asks for that from players. I think it's only right that they shoulder their fair share, and in my view, the majority blame for this season. There were some significant free agent misses. I know they wanted to improve the winger group. Very nice signings. A great signing in Kiefer Sherwood. A decent signing in Jake DeBrusk. They were forced into having to sign a goaltender and did spectacularly well with Kevin Lankinen. But Danton Heinen was a miss, and then putting all of that money into wingers when the defense corps needed address proved fatal, right? They had to fix defense in season because they didn't address it appropriately in the offseason and had to cast off Vincent Desharnais. They mismanaged the Elias Pettersson-JT Miller relationship. And I've already got people in the comments telling me that's hindsight. No, that's foresight. They knew it was a problem years ago. Jim Rutherford said as much to Gary Mason. They crossed their fingers and they hoped that it wouldn't flare up again. Your job as management is to hope for the best, but plan for the worst. They missed the second part of that equation. They were forced into a backward step trade of JT Miller. It made the team weaker. And this part is hindsight, although a lot of people were saying it at the time as well. You wound up taking some of the collateral from that trade, a first-round pick, and moving it to Pittsburgh for Marcus Pettersson. Sure, your defense is better. Great. It's the 10th overall pick this year. It could have helped land JT Miller's replacement. Really like Marcus Pettersson as a player. Would much prefer a second-line center. And
I don't begrudge that one. What I begrudge is, and I don't begrudge him, but like a useful center in Filipino. If Filipino is damaged goods and cannot play another game, if you told me you were getting
Filipino is fine in theory, but you knew of his concussion history.
Yep.
So you have to own that one too.
Yep, you do. That part I can buy.
Yeah.
A fully healthy Filipino with Pettersson. If you're telling me you get a Filipino has no concussions, you get Filipino and Marcus Pettersson for JT Miller.
Yeah, but that's ifs and buts. Yeah, but you knew. And an indecisive trade deadline that failed to get return on Brock Boeser, Pius Suter, Derek Forbort, nor boost the playoff chances by making additions. You had 1 foot in column A, 1 foot in column B.
Mm-hmm.
And look what happened. And again, infinitely predictable. Didn't have the horses. Playoff chase ran dry. now likely to get nothing for those assets, or maybe you're re-signing some of them. And then lastly, and there are many in the comments saying, where's the ownership option? And yeah, ownership sets the direction here, and we know what direction that is. Playoffs above all else. Near-term immediate gratification above long-term plan. This management group can now be charged with failing to manage up. Rutherford had done a reasonable job with that, with Francesco on that in the past. This year it went splat. Because when Alvin is talking about no backward steps at the trade deadline, he's doing that for an audience of one. He knows full well his mission is you got to make the playoffs. No, you can't trade these guys for future assets. Tell me, if you fail to make the Marcus Pettersson trade, you keep that first-round pick alongside Chytil and Mancini. You've got the 10th overall pick. I know Alvin said the offers weren't fair on Besser, and I think that is semantics with regards to roster players. They wanted a roster player back for Brock Boeser. You cannot tell me, with what the prices were at the trade deadline, that Brock Boeser was not going to return a first-round pick or a top prospect or a combination of that first-round pick, say another first-round pick or a top prospect, say a second-round pick for Pius Suter. You're telling me at that point you don't have an arsenal to go out and get a second-line center? I think you do.
I would love
You're weaker on defense,
know.
but guess what? Elias Pettersson has stepped up and been a pretty good left side defenseman.
We're never going to
robbed
get
from Peter to pay Paul in terms of weakening the center ice position to strengthen the defense, and you may now have to rob from Paul to pay Peter and trade one of these defensemen to fill your second line center void.
We're never going to know what the actual offers were from Brock Boeser. I will not believe whatever one reporter says or the other, because I think everybody's getting spin at this point, and I don't think anybody's going to really come to grips with.
But Blake,
what
if you're
was
telling
actually
other teams we're not interested in picks or prospects, we want roster players, then I can understand how the offers aren't fair.
Mm-hmm. I still think you get offers, even when you've told teams this is not what teams still submit. Yeah. Teams still come to the table. I would love to know what they turned down for Brock Boeser. Mm-hmm. Because especially the way that they've dealt with this in the end. Like, the Besser camp is none too pleased, I don't think, with the way that this has gone down.
More on that soon.
And so you've neither served that constituency, nor have you liquidated the asset and got something for him. So once again, it seems like they're in between. We're
almost back to the no plan days. Little things that you can gripe about. I do think leadership, like Ian Cole, not to mention Cole probably would have done better in the early part of the season when the defense was a mess. Ilya Mikheyev, you paid to get him off your team. He scored 20 goals this year for Chicago. So you can pick some nits, but Frank and look, we cover everything about the Vancouver Canucks, so that's going to be the case, and those of you who follow the team closely are also going to engage on that. But really, that's the window dressing stuff. You got to get the big stuff right. They did not get the big stuff right this year.
No, they got enough small stuff right that actually you could envision it would have been a good season. Mm-hmm. But the big stuff, the treatment of two 100-point players, was ultimately what did them in. I mean, again, you can talk about Thatcher Demko and a healthy Thatcher Demko. Yeah, they might have been able to drag, but it would have been that. It would have been Canuck goaltenders dragging a subpar team across the line. Mm-hmm. That might have been enough if you've got a healthy Thatcher Demko throughout the season, or comes back earlier than he did, or stays healthy. Mm-hmm. God, there's a lot of injuries there. But also, that's not really what stopped them from being a good team. What stopped them from being a good team is difference-making forwards, of which they used to have several.
Yes.
And now they have none.
You know that I think they talk about this in business schools. I don't know if it's an actual thing or a fable where someone starts with like a paper clip and they keep trading with different people to the point where the paperclip turns into something far more valuable.
Yep.
Canucks have kind of done that in inverse at the center ice position.
At center, yeah.
They had the 3 great centers. Now they don't have any centers.
They did it with goaltending. They had Schneider and Luongo.
They did it there too, right?
They had previous management.
The Daily Poll question, a presentation of Surrey Mitsubishi. And as you know, with every goal, you get $500 off a pre-owned or new vehicle. 2 goals, $1,000 off. $1,000 off. Up to 5 goals and $2,500. And that's where we were at until the next game day here against Colorado. So get yourself to the dealership. Mention Sekeres and Price. Tell them you want the rebate, score more, save more, more value, more savings. Bring them any offer. Surrey Mitsubishi will beat it. Visit 13820 104th Avenue. Time now for our top story, brought to you by Yellow Dog Brewing, Neighborhood Brewing, Foolish Winery. Done! The Canucks are mathematically eliminated from the Stanley Cup playoffs after a wild game in Minnesota, where the home team blows a late lead but recovers for an 8-7 overtime victory. We playing lacrosse here?
But
against San Jose.
The late comebacks, as it pertains to Vancouver sports teams, we're going to get to the Whitecaps eventually, don't worry, folks. But between the Canucks' own comeback win, an incredible San Jose Sharks comeback that kept them alive for a few more minutes into overtime, and then the Whitecaps itself, all within 25 hours. It was a lot. Like, if you had a heart condition, I'd be worried.
Yeah. Well, we talked about it on yesterday's show. Can Macklin Celebrini do his childhood team a solid here?
Did he ever try?
Hat trick, 5 points. Fellow rookie Will Smith scores with 50 seconds left, but it's not enough for San Jose to beat Minnesota. So the Canucks, as Blake's mentioned, missed the playoffs for the 8th time in 10 years. Really, there have been 3 one-off, and I think you can call them one-offs now because they weren't followed up with successful seasons that got to the postseason. Willie Desjardins' first year in 2015, after missing the previous year. The extended bubble playoffs of 2020, and remember, that was an expanded field, everybody, that got them into that postseason. And then last year, they have not been to consecutive postseasons since 2012, 2013. That is now a span of 12 years. They currently have the 15th pick in the National Hockey League entry draft if everything were to go to Hoyle. As mentioned, the pick they could have had from the Rangers, did have before they moved it to Pittsburgh, currently sits number 10. That is protected this year. It could become a unprotected pick next year, which really gives people the heebie-jeebies. And really, at this stage of the game, the Rangers have been so god-awful that it is only the Utah Hockey Club who could bypass them and improve their lottery odds and the number of that pick. The Utah Club is 1 point down in the same number of games and has 1 additional regulation win. So at the moment, they would hold the tiebreaker against the Canucks. New York, there was a world where maybe the Rangers could pass the Canucks. There was at one point a world where some of the other Eastern Conference teams could, but you're all but certain to be picking 14th or 15th overall if you're picking at all, Blake, in the first round.
And by the way, there should be some solace for Canucks fans, in that JT Miller was traded to the New York Rangers, a team that has some players on it in theory, in resume at the very least. But there was dressing room discord at points in their season as well. Traded away their captain. JT Miller gets the clean slate, goes into New York where people were amped to get him back as a blue shirt. They have a losing record with JT Miller in the lineup. So there was no turnaround for that team. They have been arguably worse with JT Miller than they were without. And as much as people are going to say they traded the wrong guy, there is a debate there still. There is very much a debate there as to whether or not you were ever going to win with JT Miller. He seems on the surface, at the very least, in terms of the toolkit of the player, the perfect guy for your hockey team. But it's attached to a human. And I think there's going to be
a human who doesn't play well with others off the ice often.
So there's going to be a healthy debate for a long time, I think.
Yep, I think
about
so.
whether or not really it was the wrong trade, as many people would say.
You could argue they traded the wrong guy.
Back to Horvat. Yeah. That might be the most correct. That might be the most correct.
More correct.
Yes.
What are our friends at Yellow Dog up to?
Well, needless to say, they've got spring in their minds, and you should as well. And they want to make it that much easier for you with a lot of beer. And how about the 12 packs? What's that?
Sign me up.
The 12 packs on special for the month of April for the Yellow Dog Dog Parks. When you're not sure what you feel like, get a mix box. The 12-pack dog park will have you satiated in any number of ways with their selection of beer on sale at private and government liquor stores.
While in some quarters, this should be a day of solemnity and misery. And yes, those two sentiments reign over Canucks fans. There was also, in my view, an extremely positive development. And that is Quinn Hughes' comments to Ian McIntyre. And this is captain, my captain moment from Quinn Hughes, if you ask me. First and foremost, he talks about, and this is a great word, the obligation of being captain. He feels he's obligated to make the team a success here, and said, that weighs heavily on me. I want to do something here. So for those of you who were worried about a season like any other, the toxicity and infighting that reigned in that dressing room, the inability of his colleagues to come together, put their differences aside, and play for the crest, the inability of the coaching staff and management to manage and fix that relationship. Quinn Hughes, at the very least yesterday, whenever he spoke to IMAC, was not deterred in the least. So, very, very positive in my view that he's sitting there talking about ultimately wanting to win a Stanley Cup here in Vancouver, and even says, quote, I appreciate the fans and the fact that there's never been a cup in Vancouver. I definitely think about that quite a bit as well. We always thought he was a conscientious, responsible, mature beyond his years young man, and to me that came to the fore in these comments. He also threw his unwavering support behind Rick Tocchet and Adam Foote, talking about the way they coach and how they have structured the team defensively, and then says, pointing forward, if we add another player or two and have some guys within our group play better next year than they did this past season, wonder who we could be talking about there.
Yeah.
I think we can be really, really successful. We're very structured. We don't give up much. We have maybe the best goalie tandem in the league, and we have a great D-core and others that are coming that will help us. Nod to Tom Wielander. The point is, if we get Rick back and add a piece or two, we can be very successful. If we get Rick back. And that should be heated in the offices of Jim Rutherford and Patrick Alvin, and most importantly, Francesco Aquilini, if the Canucks plan to nickel-dime a head coach at this stage of the proceedings. Hughes, he's an amazing coach. You look at me individually in my game, he's been amazing for me, amazing for a lot of guys. He's just a great person, first of all. That's a guy you want to compete for, you want to play for, and he's a terrific coach. I think just the way Rick coaches, how solid we are defensively and structured, he gives us the chance to win every night. And then he goes on to talk about his Jack Adams award last year. So, yeah,
You're-
Hughes wants Tocchet
You're making
back.
a big assumption here, though, Matt. You're making the assumption that he is saying all this to management and ownership.
I think that is in part the audience here, Blake. Yeah.
What if he's saying all this to Rick? What if it is Rick that he senses is not all in on next season?
Fair.
And this is a plea to him of, Coach, we're close. We need you.
Fair.
Come back.
That's your interpretation. Is fair. He speaks to that. But whatever he does, it's his decision. Obviously, I'd like to have him back, and I think he knows that. I see. I interpret it as Patrick, Jim, Francesco, pay the man. Give this guy an extension. Give him a raise based on the Jack Adams. Pay him. You don't have to pay him up to Mike Sullivan freight because he's not a 2-time Cup winner. But make sure you take care of this head coach. He is critical to our success going forward. That's how I interpret it.
We don't know what the ask is. Maybe he is asking to be the highest paid coach in the league. We have no idea.
Well, highball, lowball negotiations, they always.
Still, you have
Everybody
no idea.
asks for more, and then you counter. You'll find the middle ground.
It's easy for us to say, as long as the ask is reasonable, pay the man. Well, I'm sure they have that approach. I mean, he's not on the cap. They
exactly, which is why a high revenue team like the Vancouver Canucks should be paying coaches more. This is an area where you can gain a competitive advantage based on wages, based on pay scale.
So you're telling me they went to Francesco Aquilini and said, we're thinking about giving. You remember the worst defenseman on the ice in the playoff series versus the Oilers? We're going to go get that guy. We're going to give him 4 years at $2 million. That gets greenlit. That gets greenlit.
It wasn't for 2 years.
But asking for the coach of the year from last year to
that's
get
what
his
I mean. That's my point, Blake. It's
I just don't think
penny wise and pound foolish.
I don't think that's what's happening.
If you're not batting an eyelash at a $2.5 million hockey player, then that's less than the raise you're going to give Rick Tocchet. So, why would you kick up a fuss about that?
Because the coach
cost of doing business.
Because the coach is either asking to be the highest paid coach in the league.
Oh, there's no way.
We don't know. I don't know why they wouldn't pay up otherwise. Or he doesn't want to come back.
We have given Tocchet the benefit of the doubt that, he's engaged in a playoff race, and that's a singular focus, laser focus. Okay, coach, absolutely. That playoff chase is now complete.
Yeah.
And so now the ball moves firmly into Tocchet's court. And if Rick wants to continue to dicker and dither and delay, then I think that probably tells us something. That tells us that either Tocchet doesn't want to coach this team, sees greener grass somewhere else in an organization he wants to coach, or maybe, and I forget who said it to us, if it was Merrick or Shannon or whomever, that maybe he just doesn't want to coach at all.
No, he's exhausted by the year.
Exactly.
Maybe he comes back to it in a year's time, but he wants a year off.
And all of that's fair. It's his life. He gets to make the choices.
Yeah.
But don't, especially if he has one foot out the door, don't push him because you're going to nickel dime on the salary.
As for Hughes and his waxing poetic about his team, I think people have to remember that, people love, and we're seeing in the chat and YouTube, people love the storyline that, the market is so hard on them, blah, 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 blah. They are in that room, and they believe in the players in that room, the players, to a fault. Players always think that the teammates that they've spent 7 months with are way better than they often are.
Or at least they publicly say that. Yeah.
But with rare exception, I think, do players say, we can't win with that player. Unless it's as hot as we saw earlier this season. Yeah. Those are the rare. And the reason why that got headlines coast to coast to coast to coast is because of how rare that is. Mm-hmm. For the most part, they believe the guy that scored 4 goals at the end of the bench, the 12-4, they're like, no, I think he can get 12.
Yep.
Like they believe that to a fault. So I think Quinn's optimistic view of where this is going, while many people will say, it's all that he's going to say here, he's got 2 years left, he's got to bide his time. No, I think he probably has convinced himself of a lot of those truths.
Yep, I think that's probably fair. I think when he talks about players being playing better than they did last year, I bet you he thinks that Elias can be a 100-point player next year. I bet you he thinks if they bring Besser back, he can be a 40-goal guy next year.
Exactly.
Those three are very tight and have been a part of the core here.
Yeah.
And have known that from a young age, from really the moment they stepped on the NHL ice. They knew that they were going to have to form the core of the Vancouver Canucks and would do with Demko and drive most of the winning if there was winning. And this year there was not enough winning. Just lastly on Hughes, he name-checked Sidney Crosby and Nathan McKinnon, said he's been there, he's seen how those guys go about their summers and preparation. He talked about competing in the summer. He talked about it not in terms of preparation, but as an extension of competition, which I also really loved the framing and the verbiage use there. And he threw his support behind that blueprint. So if Alvin comes out next week and talks about, the Sidney talks about the Sidney Crosbys and the Summers and how they prepare, know that the captain is aligned with that discussion and those messaging points. More from Ian. Brock Boeser telling him, quote, "Honestly, it's unlikely at this point," when asked about his return. "It sucks. It's unfortunate." He continued on, "We all know it's been a roller coaster of a year. There's been a lot of different things." Look, I am not the least bit surprised if at this stage of the game, on the road, before the last homestand, that Brock Boeser is going to allow some of his frustration to come out with the way he was characterized by the front office, and particularly Patrick Alvin on trade deadline day when he made that unfortunate comment about, "If I told you the offers I got from Besser, I'd have to leave the room." And the fact that he wasn't prioritized over new Canucks like Marcus Pettersson, Drew O'Connor, Kevin Lankinen, who did get, in some cases, immediate contract extensions. Could I see the Canucks making a last-ditched offer to see if they can get Besser at something closer to their terms before he hits unrestricted free agency? Yep, I can. Do I think Brock Boeser is likely going to be available on July 1st? Yeah, I do.
Yeah, I think they're going to think that he gets a huge bag. I'll be interested ultimately to see that, Matt. So the salary cap's going up, so he's getting signed somewhere, and he's going to get good money. But I want to know what the raise is from where he's at currently, given that there's inflation. Like, I do think his management group might ultimately be disappointed by what offers they get.
He's had a poor second half.
And I think when you look at the speed of the league right now,
yep,
I think people are going to see he would be a great player on a great team.
Mm-hmm.
Like on a team that is set and you're wanting to make sure you've got goals on the wings. Great player for that team.
Mm-hmm.
Team X. There's a handful of teams that might fit that bill. But that team has probably got a lot of cap hits, and they may not have the space. So I'm not saying Brock Boeser can't be effective for his new team. But I don't know, he can't. It's going to be hard for him to have his cake and eat it too. Mm-hmm. Be in the right place where he can excel and to get his money. I don't know if those things can happen at the same time.
It's 3 points in 8 games in February, 10 points in 15 games in March, and then 3 points in the 4 games here in April. So it's not like he closed with an exclamation point and said, here's my free agency candidate. I'm in a walk here, and bang, look at the totals. So, yeah, I'm interested.
Like, he might get his number on the San Jose Sharks. But if he wants to win,
mm-hmm.
I don't think he's going to get his number.
Yep. Elias Pettersson has a wrist injury, according to Dollywall. Will he play again this season? That is one of the questions that will be answered, I suppose, once they come back from the final road trip here in Denver and get ready for the Minnesota Wild on Saturday night and the final 2 home games of the regular season next week. Dollywall says both Quinn Hughes and Thatcher Demko have declined USA Hockey for the World Championships.
Good news for all.
But there is a long list of Canucks that you wonder whether they will be in Stockholm and in Denmark for the Worlds. Besser, probably not because the UFA don't want to get hurt. But Garland, Sherwood, O'Connor, Joshua Forbert amongst the Team USA candidates. DeBrus for Canada. Roenick for the Czechs. Lankinen for the Finns. Suter for the Swiss. Marcus Pettersson, Nils Höglander for the Swedes. Oh, Lekkerimäki maybe even too. Who knows?
Well, it's AHL playoffs. We'll have a big say in that for Lekkerimäki.
Fair.
Yeah.
And, of course, Teddy Bluger for Latvia.
All those international
And
players I could see all playing, depending on Roenick's health.
Yeah. Roenick, it's a health matter. And like some of these guys may be playing through things that just they're not going to
get worse.
Risk it. Yeah. They're not going to risk it getting worse. Suter, probably not because of the UFA status, although they're.
We'll see if that changes.
Yeah. I mean, that's one thing here, and you don't sign players simply for the optics and to help detract from bad news stories. But if you re-sign Pius Suter over the next week, that would, particularly if it's to a reasonable contract. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That could be a win. Like that can win you a day here in what is going to be a lot of tough days.
Yeah.
For this management group, especially if Tocchet leaves.
Well, I was going to say they can't bring anybody new in until the draft, but they could re-sign Suter. They could re-sign the coach. And even if you're walking away from Besser, I wouldn't even put Besser on that list.
Forbert, too.
And if you get Forbert on a lark of a number, which he might at the age of 33,
so.
you might be able to do that. I think
the way he played this year and their penalty kill, and look, he had a very tough start to the season. We all know he lost his father. And
do you have to give him a raise, though, 1.5?
Yeah, I think you have to give him a little bit. The cap's going so far up that everybody's getting
I know, but that's the thing is you can't apply it to everybody. I
mean,
he's 33.
What are you talking? You give him $2 million?
I think
or you give him a multi-year deal at 175?
2 years at 175?
Something like that. Yeah. Anyways. Situations there'll be
but more so with the two big names, you're right.
And
it's not the same as a playoff win, but at least you keep some positivity up here in the month of April if you can get both of those guys done in the next 3 weeks.
Yeah. And honestly, Blake, if not by your year-end press conference, which we anticipate will be next Thursday, all but convinced that the players will clean out the locker and meet the media next Thursday. Say that because, when you're out of the playoffs with this many games left, the players just want to GTFO. So I suspect you're going to see the players next Thursday. The question for me is, will you see management go on Thursday as well? Will management want to go Friday? I can see that from a logistical point of view. It is Good Friday, the holiest day of the year for Christians. And also, do you want to be calling in staff to work on a Good Friday? That's not the most tactful thing if you can do it else. But also, if you do want to just load it up on Thursday with management and players, you give management some cover because a lot of people are going to be picking up on what players said and wanting to be talking about that as opposed to...
We've seen it in politics, Matt. If you fire hose it, some of the details get lost and glossed over.
Right. So what I do know is, if again, it would be a good news story for them because Tocchet is still popular in this market. I know he has his detractors. I know there are some on social media who are consistently pointing out the lack of offense with his team, sent now 3 NHL stops. But Blake, I'm looking at our poll question, 1,000 votes in. Who deserves the most blame for this season? Coaches are getting 2%. Everybody's getting far more of the vote than that. But so if you can re-sign Tocchet in the next week. But I will say this, if you disperse for the summer as an organization, I don't think you have a lot of time to get Tocchet under contract before people realize, okay, something's amiss there. Like, if a week or two passes after next week, Blake, without Rick Tocchet's an extension, like if it goes...
I'll give it a month. I'll give it May 15th. If there's nothing by May 15th, oh boy, yeah, I doubt it's happening.
I think the writing is on the wall there. Yeah. Tom Wielander, Aiden Celebrini Canucks prospects playing for Boston University today in the Frozen Four. They face Penn State at 4:30. That's on TSN Plus. The winner's going to take on the winner of the other semifinal between Denver and Western Michigan. Denver has 2 of the last 3, if I'm not mistaken. Saturday is the final at 5:30, also on TSN Plus. Our friend Dave Hall from Canucks Army, tracking Canucks prospects in the CHL playoffs. Parker Alcos of the Edmonton Oil Kings, defenseman, eliminated. They lost that deciding Game 7 of Prince Albert. But there are 4 Canucks prospects in the CHL who are into round 2, led by Sawyer Minio, Canadian World Junior defenseman. His Calgary Hitmen take on the Lethbridge Hurricanes. That starts tonight, round 2 in the dub. We mentioned Anthony Romani and Riley Patterson, the 2 Barrie Colts, earlier in the week with Cam Robinson. They're off to face Kingston in the second round of the OHL. That also starts tonight. And then Basil Sansonens, the Swiss defensive defenseman with the Rimouski Oceanic, are playing Chicoutimi. That starts tomorrow in the Q playoffs. And then one other Canuck prospect note, Vilmer Ulrichsen has been assigned to the Abbotsford Canucks. Now, he has been out since mid-February with a shoulder injury, but his OHL team was eliminated. So the theory there from Dave is they're just bringing him around the Abbotsford group to get some experience, get to know the guys, see what professional hockey is about.
Yeah, I don't know that there's a ton of excitement in AHL debuts and all that sort of stuff. But
I'm not even sure he's going to debut because of the injury. But
yeah,
we'll see. The big name there is Minio. The Calgary Hitmen have a good team. Minio could go several rounds here. He, of course, has made terrific progress since the Canucks took him in the 3rd round a couple of years ago, playing for the Canadian World Junior team. He's not the most dynamic guy, but he checks a lot of boxes that NHL scouts want to see. And
Wielander, of course.
Yeah. I mean, I was talking to CHL guys, but of course, Wielander.
Although, the quote-unquote problem with the excitement about Wielander, if he goes to Abbey too, with Abbotsford being a wagon, like what are the chances they're dropping in these guys into CHL playoff games, given they don't lose with the current group that they have?
No.
You might be a little reticent if you're Manny Malhotra to change it up.
Yeah. I mean, with the way things are going, you've got all the horses you need with Lekramacky now.
Especially with the other guys.
Yeah, and other guys as well who are going to be assigned there after the Canucks are done. The big Canucks, that is. Today's menu brought to you by Greta, and we'll be there tonight. Doors at 5, game at 6, presented by Fountain Tire. It is another and the final for this season, as it turns out. Canucks Army viewing party at Greta. This is a free event. Just walk right in. If you did buy tickets previously, we will refund you. The VIP package is still there for the burger, the beer, and the game card at $40. Got to be 19 plus to attend. Secure your spot now on the VIP side of things, or just walk in and come say hi. 50 West Cordova, Greta Bar. Let the games begin. We will talk to Patrick Johnson here on a number of Vancouver Canucks topics, as we always do with the province's beat reporter, and Rob Williams as well, as we unpack and postmort this Vancouver Canucks season. Time now for our Bet365 Bets of the Day. The segment proudly brought to you by Bet365. I took a Masters future yesterday, Blake, so why don't you lead us off?
I'm going to go with a couple of points for Quinn Hughes tonight. Quinn Hughes versus Cale Makar tends to bring out the best in him.
Tie Alex Edler's record,
they
right?
Would,
He's 2 points away.
And also tie his second best season in the NHL. For all that we've said about the time missing for Quinn Hughes, even with that, he'll be his second most productive self if he gets a couple of points here the rest of the way. But if he gets it tonight, it's plus 250 for Quinn Hughes.
Kiefer Sherwood is 2 goals away from 20. He scored in the Canucks last game. He has kind of scored in bunches. He's kind of been like DeBrusk this year. He's been a bit of a streaky scorer. I think he's going to get a lot of shooting opportunities because I think his teammates are going to be passing him the puck. I think his teammates are going to be encouraging him to shoot the puck, get to 20. Now, it won't be a ching goal because he's under contract. But it's good value at plus 500 for Kiefer Sherwood as an anytime goal scorer tonight. Breaking news coming in from Bet365, where every nail-biting overtime win is a barn burner, every face-off, hat-trick, power play, shot on goal, penalty shot, and every suspenseful minute in between. Amazing. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365, an official partner of the NHL. Download the app and use the code NATION to get in on the game. Must be 19 or older. Please play responsibly. Patrick Johnson coming up next. Sick Harrison Price from the historic Wall Center.
Anybody ever raise their hand and say, I love traffic? No, that's not you. No one loves traffic.
Missed my cue there.
So why not get out of traffic, never make an annoying pit stop for gas ever again, and be in the cockpit of a beautiful vehicle? We're talking about the Toyota BZ4X. He's got his hands up for that one. And why wouldn't you? Go take one for a test drive at your local Pacific Toyota dealer. Find out what it's all about. Fully electric, $6,500 in rebates and incentives, and you can finance it at 0.99% APR financing for 36 months. It's amazing. It's at Toyota. ShopToyota.ca.
Patrick Johnson covers the Canucks for the province and sports media. He joins us now. How are you?
Dare I think back to the famous Sekeres v. Linden bike lane debate and traffic? I just remember listening.
V. Linden?
There was a Linden mat. It was, I mean, this is, 10 years ago. I don't even know. But somehow they got into it. I just remember it being quite...
Must have been during a President's Week. And yeah, a lot of questions that would come up that day. I don't specifically
I just,
remember.
It's burned in my mind. I don't know why.
I have taken the L on the Burrard Street Bridge bike lane because I thought it would create absolute chaos both ways, and really it hasn't had a demonstrably delaying effect.
Proud
so
of
I
you.
have taken that.
And you know what? Let's be honest. Let's be clear. I have to be clear, guys. When I come into the studio now, I generally am on the e-bike, and I'm taking the Hornby Street bike lane right to the studio. So there you go.
Yeah. Yep. No, the Hornby has a very effective bike lane. Yeah,
but we digress.
Yeah, get in that HOV lane. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
get that car.
So
I'm good.
Famously, former Canucks executive Brian Burke has always said and always behaved the same way on the day you're officially mathematically eliminated from the playoffs. He comes in miserable. He is a curmudgeon, or more curmudgeonly than usual, and intentionally, deliberately, to show everybody.
Yeah.
What a day of failure it is for the organization. So, rather than starting on a negative note, Patrick, how about them Whitecaps, huh?
Oh, wow. Holy smokes. I had written them off. I was just, that's a shame. Whatever the guy's name was that scored for Pumas, I was like, oh, that's a shame. They battled hard. It felt like they were coming. Yep. And then it went the other way. Right? Well, this team's a lot better than them. This was inevitable. And then I had to tried to explain Candace away goal. She's not a fan of away goals.
Yeah,
she wants outright wins. She's Matt. I'll tell her, you and her. She wants wins. She doesn't care.
Wins.
This doesn't seem fair. I'm like, this is how they
everybody
get
knows the rules going in.
Anyway, thrilling stuff. Glad I got that Fubo subscription.
Not a game.
Yeah, and we have a winner in town. So good on the Whitecaps. Okay. Moving right along here. Who shoulders the most blame for this failure of a season from the Vancouver Canucks. It's our Surrey Mitsubishi poll question. You can vote for management. You can vote for players. You can vote for coaches.
Mm-hmm.
You can vote for just one player. Or you can go completely off the board.
God. Oh, I have to name someone. I don't even get options. See, I was hoping that you'd do the work for me and I could just pick somebody.
You're welcome to put a name on it. We're not preventing you.
Jeez. I mean, do we have to go all the way back? It's too much to go all the way back and saying it was the fatal error was Jim Rutherford's just deciding to sign JT Miller over Bo Horvat. Because listen, Miller was amazing last year. So he dragged them through those playoffs. So I'm not going to do that. I mean, the blow up this year you can go all the way back to deciding and carrying on with them. I mean, this was inevitable. I don't know, Patrick Alvin, I guess, for misfiring on the defense signings and not I don't know, man. It's a lot of things. You're asking me to pick one thing? Is it collective? Elias Pettersson.
We're not saying the blame resides with one entity and one entity only. We're saying who shoulders
in
most.
the pie chart. Who's got the biggest piece of the pie?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to blame Elias Pettersson and JT Miller for.
No, you can.
No, he
just
can
name
blame
one player. Name one player.
He can blame the two of them.
Okay, so
as a collective for whatever. Setting aside, however terrible things apparently were off the ice. In the end, they were on the ice and they didn't do enough, and I've been clear on that. I suppose management and coaching staff for misfiring on defense and not finding that sort of puck moving. I mean, look how much better they are playing. There has to have been a way to find the collection of defensemen they currently have, at least, the style of play last year. Should they have moved Brock Boeser last summer? I mean, I love Brock Boeser, but that was the time. If you were not going to re-sign him, and like were they not aggressive enough? I mean, I suppose that's hindsight, but like there's a lot of different things. I think they weren't aggressive enough. It's in hindsight, it's surprising how they weren't even more aggressive than they could have been, or than they were, I guess, because. Look where they got. I mean, they knew that the team was going to step back. They knew that they had a window that no matter how the season's gone, there was always going to be a question about the Quinn Hughes window, right? Fundamentally, he's coming up on unrestricted free agency. That is always going to be a very challenging thing to manage your way through. You can't just assume that one negotiation is going to be like another. I think they weren't aggressive enough in the end. They sat back and they sort of said, well, we can kind of coast through this and sort of have a little dip and we'll be fine and we'll come out the other side of it. And given how at least aggressive they've been in thinking in the previous two seasons, it's a disappointment. So I'm going to hang it mostly on management on this one. I think they just misread the overall picture, and here we are.
You want them to be aggressive last year. Will they be aggressive this year, given all the restraints?
Have no choice.
But
they have no choice. I don't know how they do it. I mean, this is
okay. So you walk away from Besser, which just in and of itself is an aggressive move to some degree. So my question is, they need a $9 million player. If it's not named Brock Boeser, they need another $9 million. They need a player of that quality. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, like you're looking at the UFA market, I don't see a $9 million player there. And to trade, you need to give to get, and I don't know that they've got the assets that makes them that much demonstrably better. Like they need to trade.
Marner and Ehlers are.
Yeah, I know, but then
Marner's much more. Ehlers
Matt, you're giving up Sun, Moon, and Stars to get them, so then you're not just adding to this group anymore.
You're signing
2.5 years ago, when Rick Tocchet showed up, let's not forget, the centers were Elias Pettersson, JT Miller, and Bo Horvat. As good a trio of centers you were going to find in the NHL. Right? 1, 2, 3. And now they have Elias Pettersson, and they might not even keep him. Right? Like that is, if you zoom out for all the good little moves, then they've made some good moves. This management team has been pretty coherent, a lot more focused. I mean, I wrote about this earlier in the week. The fact they sent Jonathan Carey-Mackey down, because the player has been struggling, they were, let's get him, we're not going to push this. And everyone, loved, well, what about McCann and Vertanen? Was that what Rick Tocchet was like? No, I think he was talking about Niels Höglander and Vasily Podkolzin. who just had sort of a overly aggressive introduction to the NHL. But nonetheless, they've ended up with one center, and they're not even sure about him. And there's no centers coming down the pipeline. Like, that's the other failure in all this. And that's a longer view one. That's not just on these guys. That goes back to Jim Benning trading away. Even that it's not just that they didn't draft Dylan Guenther. They could have drafted a young center there, right? It's saying, well, Adam Gaudette is going to be the guy, and then Adam Gaudette wasn't the guy, and that was all they had, right? Like, there are no centers in the system coming that have any intrigue and any usefulness. Like they needed a top end guy, and they misfired. And it's the same thing with Karamaki. Like, there were guys on the table. He's still an interesting prospect, but there were guys on the table that might have changed this story. And so that
I would take.
That's the failure right now, is that they're you're right. Like, Blake's right. They have to get aggressive, but I don't know how they're going to do it. It's a really, really challenging spot they find themselves in.
Well, they've got $13 million or so in cap space.
Yeah.
They're going to spend all that, and they may have to peel future assets, guys like Tom Wielander and first-round picks, to see if they could fill the second-line center void. I don't really want to relitigate this, but that was a 9-player draft in 2021, Guenther being the 9th. I mean, sure. Tyler Boucher was a surprise 10th overall. I don't see a center beyond that in the first round, other than maybe Cole Sillinger, that you would hang your hat on. But there are also some young centers there who haven't even played an NHL game. Who knows, may turn
Zach Bolduc looks pretty neat. Right? Like, I get your point. Like, why Johnston went 23, right? Like,
sorry, Johnston, of course.
But like, Johnston, I'm just saying, like, in the end,
my bad.
Like, I'm just saying, it's not just that Dylan. The point is, it's not just that they missed out on Guenther. It's that they missed out on that. And then, like, Klimovich, like, everybody said drop Stankoven. You could have Logan Stankoven right now. Mm-hmm. And they went with the guy that, listen, Klimovich has been okay. He's been, I think, pretty decent this year, but still, you got nothing for sure.
Let's not litigate the 2021 draft. I apologize. Quinn Hughes saying what he said to Ian McIntyre.
Yeah.
First of all, you love the fact that he takes the captaincy as a solemn responsibility, right? And that he's taking so much responsibility and accountability for being the leader. He absolutely throws all his support behind Rick Tocchet and Adam Foote, and crediting them for the defensive structure and the way they play, and how that is going to underpin team success. And we've seen that over the last 2 seasons. Quote, if we add another player or two and have some guys within our group play better next year than they did this past season, I think we can be really, really successful team. We're structured. We don't give up much, and we have maybe the best goalie tandem in the league, blah, 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 blah. Blah. The point is, if we get Rick back and add a piece or two, we can be very successful. He's a pretty wise cat, Quinn Hughes. I interpreted that as a significant message to management and ownership to pay the man, Rick Tocchet. Did you see it likewise?
I took it as him basically laying out, here's what I need to see, in a personal sense, without talking too much about his own situation, but basically saying, here's what I need to see. And one of those things is, I really like this coach. I really have a lot of time for this coach. This is the right coach here. Let's figure this out. Yeah, it was a candidate. As candid as he's been all year. It's been a difficult season. You can tell. Quinn is. He's had to talk a lot about a lot of bad hockey, and he has sessions with us. I don't think he's had a whole lot of fun. So to see him have a good candid conversation was, it's not the way he wanted to do it, but it's the way he had to do it. Made it clear. Like, I took it exactly the same way. Like, he says, I need to see this, this, and this, and I include the coach in what I need to see.
Yeah, and the great news for Canucks, and he's also aligned in that he's talking about adding to the group as opposed to any kind of subtraction, which is going to play well in the owner's suite as well as in, maybe not as well as in management if they have designs on a deeper cut here. But the good news for Canucks fans is he sounds like a guy who is still 100% invested and committed. Yeah. And that could change with another shitty season. but it doesn't sound like there is a massive wound or scar tissue based on this year.
You know, for all the sort of I don't even know what the word is, all the commentary about what a sort of noisy place this can be to play between us and fans and what have you. Like, the way these guys love being here always stands out to me. That story, I got talked with this last, I've mentioned this before, that story I wrote last year about how much they love living here, or maybe that was 2 years ago. Anyway, but the fact that Tyler Myers and JT Miller jumped out of their chairs to tell me about how much they love being here. And that's a reiterated every time I talk to Brock Boeser. Every time, honestly, you can tell it with Hughes. He brings it up. Like, these guys like being here, but they also want to win. And that, to me, is the overriding factor. Is how are you going to make this what we had last year, and how are we going to make this sustainable, not just be a once-in-a-while thing. That the project is about consistency, both from players, but also from management. I mean, I mentioned that after the deadline, when nothing, that these guys looked around, they heard a lot of noise about some of their teammates. None of that happened, and then there was nobody brought in to make the team better, right? Like, I would have, if I just, that was my reaction. These guys are thinking, well, why didn't you bring anybody in at least? You haven't given us anything else. And, if you're Pete DeBoer on Tuesday night and you look around and you look at that group of centers and you're like, we lost to that? Like credit to the guys that are doing the work, but I'm going to beat this drum to the end of time that this team has not done enough in terms of building centers, finding centers, and that they need to do more. And that this team is woefully misconstructed right now. Is that a word? Misconstructed?
Yep, I think so. We'll allow it. We'll allow it. I mean, part of that is, to me, Chytil as well. The problem with Chytil, and again, this is not his fault, but in the acquisition of Chytil in the JT Miller trade, I think part of the hope was there's a player there that's a little bit better than his cap hit, and we can use that. They gambled on his health, and even if, and no one's hoping for this at all, no one is hoping for this. But if Chytil's career is in jeopardy here, and the first priority would be, hey, that's tragic for that player.
Yeah.
But from the hockey standpoint, additionally, the Canucks, like with some players, if that happens, you'd be like, well, they get a huge cap hit and they can replace it. They don't get a huge cap hit here with Chytil. They were gambling that he was going to outplay his cap hit. And so that doesn't work in their favor in any way. The best case scenario is that's the last concussion of Chytil's career. He gets in the lineup and is the kind of prospect that everybody was hoping that he would be. But there's no get out of jail free card there with the Chytil contract either. So they have to build their team thinking that Chytil's not there, basically. Well,
there's also the argument, and apologies to whoever said this, because I've seen this in the last few days. It might have been someone who, on my mentions of Blue Sky, it might have been someone in a chat. I don't remember who it was. So apologies to whoever that is. Whoever you are, you're going to text me.
Mm-hmm. You get credit, yeah.
And I'll give you credit next week. But there is a way of thinking about that the price, in many ways, the price that the Rangers extracted from the Canucks for taking on the entirety of the Miller contract was that they got to offload Chytil and the problem that he presented.
Right.
That's the other way of looking at it. If he sticks and he has health, that's how you're playing with house money.
Which is additionally sad, though, PJ, that you had to effectively take on a problem for giving a team a 90-point player. Like that's a tragedy as well. Like, come on.
But remember, Miller thought he was going to New York. The owner squashed the deal that Saturday morning, told his GM, go out and make sure and get them to retain. And I think what happened from there is that Chris Drury and the Rangers were able to convince James Dolan, no, hold on, wait a second, boss. We're getting significant relief from what could be a really significant
we're getting a reliable problem. We're getting off something that's unreliable and getting someone that we think is more reliable. I mean, obviously they aren't making the playoffs either, so they didn't exactly solve that problem. Listen, Chytil is an interesting player, and I think he brings a dynamic to the team when he's healthy that you can see the difference. And the numbers back that up, by the way, right? Like the Canucks, the Chytil's Corsi, Chytil's expected goals, like all the numbers line up. When he is on the ice, the Canucks are at the offensive end, and good things are happening, right? Unfortunately, he's got a really brutal concussion history. And so you don't know if he's going to be able to carry on. I mean, obviously, we saw him on Friday. Like when we were at the rink on Friday for practice last week at UBC, he was in evidence, right? Like he wasn't on the ice, but we saw him in workout gear. He's nodded and smiled. He was one of the last guys to leave. Like he clearly is feeling a lot better. Rick Tocchet was very cautious in answering that, but he clearly is feeling a lot better. So that is good news.
And maybe the only silver lining to them missing the playoffs is an extra long offseason for him to recover. Maybe that's...
Well, yeah, but fundamentally the problem remains, and we know that concussion issues generally don't magically disappear. So...
There are cases like Crosby, though, where extended times off make you more resilient.
And listen, a lot of these things are they've evolved in what we understand. I mean, one of the things that happened with Brock Boeser, for instance, was realizing that what he actually was dealing with was more whiplash, right? Like that he had to relieve different parts of his system. It wasn't so much his brain; it was more the nerves. Yeah. So these things are complicated. They're not necessarily what you see there up front, but. In the end, the fact remains this team has a huge problem down the middle, and Filip Chytil, whether he's healthy or not, is not the full solution. He is a Band-Aid. They need to fix
He makes you feel a little bit better about Suter.
So, since you're pounding the table on center iceman,
yes.
We asked this yesterday on the Surrey Mitsubishi poll question. Suter at $5 million on a 4 or 5 year deal. You doing that?
Well, I mean, this is the other thing I've been looking at, right? Like I wrote a bit about this on the weekend. Look at the Vegas Golden Knights. We were watching, and you can talk all you want about LTIR, but what you really need to talk about is how well constructed their cap is, right? They have two guys on big deals. They've got Jack Eichel on $10 million. They have Mark Stone on $9.5. Right? Those are your elite superstar players. That's how much, they probably should be making more, but that's good for them. Then you have 3 guys right below that who are your fascinating secondary. You got Thomas Hertl, who, on that 6.75 deal that the Sharks signed him to that lasts forever, but hell of a player. Great value there. William Karlsson, who's been a great second line center for that team, is now 32, 5.9. Ivan Barbashev, $5 million. Where do you put Pius Suter in their category? Because if you do, then that's a great number. But if you're not convinced that he is one of those guys, I'm not so sure how good $5 million looks. And I love Pius Suter. I think he's playing great. He's proven to be a very, very handy player. I credit to him for taking the moment and doing the absolute best he could have, and doing everything he can. I'm not sure that the way to spend $5 million is on Pius Suter, because where do you really want Pius Suter in your lineup? You want him to be your third center.
I think you're forgetting then if you don't spend $5 million that way, how else are you spending the $5 million?
I know, I get it, but I get it.
So
I'm just not sure that's, if you really want to sit back and have an ideal cap structure, is that really where you want to be chipping, giving money away?
Let me ask you this question. Re-sign Suter.
Sure.
Let's say it's 5, or let's say it's 4.5, whatever the case may be. And sign Jack Roslovic, who they have been tied to in the past.
Yeah.
At that point, are you done at center? You've got Pettersson. You've got those 2 guys. You hope Chytil comes back. You got Teddy Bluger in the 4-hole. You got Ratu. You've got 6 guys who can play center.
Yeah.
You're covered against injury. Yeah, you may not have the classic number 2, but you've flooded the position with quality, or the best quality you can muster on your budget without having to peel big assets. Mm-hmm. And, you go into next year and hope you can do it by committee.
The fact Roslovic has been a useful player on a very good team is a good sign. I've long been skeptical of him.
Yeah, me too.
He's not a meter mover, but he's a solid player.
But he doesn't create. He's a finisher.
Mm-hmm.
He's got his assists are at 16 for a full season. Like, that's not a quintessential center for me.
Is he? Even if
they don't have creators off the wing. It's not like they have a winger like even a Verbata, like guys who could.
I mean,
Create
that's
offense.
like if you're
Daniel.
telling me you're signing him and Mitch Marner, then I'm going okay.
Yeah.
Wow, no, you're not signing.
But you're not signing Mitch Marner.
not
So
signing
what
Mitch
are we
Marner.
talking?
Come on.
You know,
Come
like I think in isolation I need to see more because him alone doesn't move the meter for me.
All right. Well, we'll have plenty of time to talk about this over the course of the next 5 months or so. Patrick, until then, how about them Whitecaps?
How about, is Lionel Messi going to come? There we go. Lots to talk about.
Sick Harrison Price from the historic Wall Center. This next segment brought to you by the Arnold Palmer designed Whistler Golf Club. Spring preparations underway. Excited for opening day, May 9th. Now accepting online bookings for the entirety of the 2025 season. No need to wait. Get those times locked in. And if you have a group of 12 or more and you're planning a 2025 visit, get those times on hold right now. The prime times are filling up fast. And of course, tell them about your group. whistlergolf.com/groups. Follow on social media at Whistler Golf. As we welcome in the national sports editor of the Daily Hive and its Offside Sports vertical, our friend Rob the Hockey Guy on Twitter. Rob Williams, how are you?
Hey guys, I'm doing great. How are you?
Very well.
Fantastic. We'll start with the Surrey Mitsubishi poll question, Rob. Who is most to blame for this Canucks season? Are you going management, coaches, players, or just one player?
Open to interpretation.
Classic Sakaris Price.
Hey, don't typecast us. Don't put us in a box. Come on.
I think if you, for me, I would like to go off the board. I'll give you an answer from that selection. But the hockey gods, this is a cursed season. Like the injuries, you know how teams say, you don't want to use injuries as an excuse, and injuries happen to all teams. How many teams had injuries like the Vancouver Canucks this season? Everyone's gone down at some point. If Elias Pettersson, if the Pettersson-Miller feud doesn't happen, do they make the playoffs? Probably. But at the same time, like if Thatcher Demko's healthier this season, do they make the playoffs? I think they probably do. If Quinn Hughes doesn't get hurt, do they make the playoffs? If Philip Hronek doesn't get hurt, do they make the playoffs? Like there's a lot of those types of things that happen to so many guys. Like seemingly every important player on the team was injured at one point or another. With that said, from the options on your poll question, it's player. I'm going to say players because I blame Pettersson and Miller for that whole fiasco. Just seemed so childish that they couldn't coexist and work together. Don't know enough of the details about exactly what happened, but it definitely seems like there's blame to go around to both guys. So that would be what I would say.
Missing 10 to 15 games this year was the starting goaltender, the number one defenseman, the number two defenseman, the number one centerman, and then you can go down the list of the role players as well. But literally, that's how you would draw up what you need to be a good team. You need a couple good defensemen, a starting goalie, and a number one centerman. And all of those players did miss 10 to more games.
Rob asked about how many teams. There's a good site, NHLinjuryviz.blogspot.com. It breaks down not just your traditional injuries, man, games lost and things like that, but it weights it versus WAR.
Right.
So wins above replacement. And the chart churns out that the Toronto Maple Leafs, Colorado Avalanche, and Minnesota Wild were the most affected by injuries because, of course, man games lost doesn't account for a sixth defenseman versus a number one center. So those three teams were the most hampered by injuries to key players. The Canucks are right there with the Flames and Islanders amongst the next group of teams.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So amongst the leaders, if not the leaders.
I have to scrutinize the methodology once we've done this.
Please do. That's what you do best, Rob Williams. And I want to get to this altogether poster in a second here, Rob. Well, I mean, this is this is up your alley in terms of what you guys look for. But before we get there, we were talking about it in the opening block. Missed the playoffs 8 8 of the last 10 years. So you can really go back to like 3 one-offs since the glory days, right, of the Sedins. The 2015 team, Willie Desjardins' first year, the expanded postseason bubble that got them in 2020, and then last year. So, the norm is this is a team that tries to make the playoffs every year, playoffs above all else, and still misses a large percentage of the time.
Yeah, I mean, remember last year, I was telling you, I don't know how many sports writers or people that cover the NHL have waited longer to cover a playoff game in person than myself, because I started my first time in the press box was in 2015 after they had made the playoffs. So that 2015-16 season, and it took all the way until 2024 before I saw a playoff game at Rogers Arena. Yeah, it's been a rough decade. I mean, I think there's, at least we're out of the Benning era, and I think that was a darker time than right now. As I said last week, I don't think it's as bad as it feels. That doesn't mean I think they're on a great path here to contending for Stanley Cup, but I do think that when you look at this group, if they just have a little bit more luck in a few areas, if they just have Pettersson return to the guy I think that he can be, if they just have Demko be the goalie that we think he can be, and not have his career be completely derailed, things are not going to look nearly as bleak next season. And I do have confidence in this management group, at least, certainly more than the Benning regime, to fill out spots on the roster. And if you have a good summer, things can change in a hurry.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I have more confidence in them than the Benning group, but of course, very low bar there. So you're blaming mostly Miller and Pettersson for the feud. Okay, fair enough. What was management's biggest misstep? The Miller trade, the summer free agency, and opening the season with that core, the trade deadline, the failure to manage up, if you will. Not extending Rick Todd. I mean, you tell me, what do you think the biggest misstep was for management this season?
Yeah, I think it was the defense. They came into the season with a defense that was not nearly adequate enough. I think we saw it right off the hop with, I know Artur Shilov's shoulders some blame on in the opener to Calgary when they blew that 3-goal lead. But it was the defense. It wasn't good enough to start the year. Then they had to remedy it in the season, and it took trading JT Miller to do that. And I think it's especially that was especially a misstep because they made a lot of unnecessary moves, and to kind of like bolster the wing. Like they brought in, remember bringing in Danton Heinen. Like, what was that about? Spending all that money on Vinny Desharnais, I think was a poor move. Even guys like Ilya Mikheyev, who's having a decent year in Chicago. I mean, I don't think he would have been like a world beater in Vancouver, but you had to give up a second-round pick to get rid of him. You had to retain on his salary, and you spent on Heinen instead. Would Mikheyev have been? I think Mikheyev was a better player than Heinen, and I think that that's something that this management group does need to shoulder a bit of blame on, is moving off guys after 1 year. We've praised them for that before, like, hey, you made a mistake and get off them right away.
But you want to make it a rule.
They have sometimes just done that where it's like, okay, they're just, when you're wrong on it, then you are trading at rock bottom prices on guys. And and Mikheyev, I think, is a classic example. So for me, that was the misstep. I think losing a guy like Ian Cole was a poor move. Just having like stabilizing guys at the beginning you can think back, like, does Miller and Pettersson, does that go so far off the rails if they have a better start to the season? There's a lot of what ifs. With that said, they had two of the best free agent signings in the league with Langton and Sherwood. So it wasn't a complete disaster of an offseason, but I do think you have to go back to that. They started the year with a defense that was just not up to par.
Yeah, and you're quite right. When you trade it low, Ebb, you compound the mistake. Ilya Mikheyev, 20 goals this year, 34 points for the Chicago Blackhawks. They traded him, Sam Lafferty, and a second-round pick to Chicago for a fourth-round pick.
I'd have Ilya Mikheyev back on my team. That contract was just too much for that player in particular. But I think I know the answer based on what you just said, but let's spell it out. I mean, some are still saying, or Drant's talking about this as well, strip it down. Like it's time to really start from scratch here and make massive changes to this team. I think it sounds like, Rob, you're saying, no, address the edges, maybe one key signing, something like that. You want to add to this group more than take away. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, was strip it down mean like tear it down, rebuild around everybody, get rid of
probably
everybody.
Pedersen gone.
I love Thomas, and I appreciate the sentiment, and there's part of it that I agree with, but it's just not reality with this owner. He is not going to allow that. The last guy who suggested that is out.
I don't think it's tear it down for the purposes of a get bad rebuild. I think it's trade Pedersen.
Plus, you've got to
get rid of Besser,
Hughes, especially after what Hughes has said to Ian McIntyre here.
But you can change everything. Matt Duchene kind of trades. You do that, or do you hold on to the player and
he's
hope?
Free agent? But yes,
I mean
Matt Duchene out of Colorado.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Okay.
I wouldn't do a tear it down rebuild with this group. I think they've got enough pieces. I do think they need to consider like a 2-year plan. It doesn't always have to be like a 1-year plan. Like we're gonna do it next year. Mm-hmm. I do have time for like, okay, we're gonna make a couple moves. We might not be a better team next season, but we're eyeing the year after that to really push forward. So that would require if you're trading Pedersen, you're not trading him for picks and prospects and immediately flipping those picks and prospects for guys that can help you right now. You'd be trading for guys that you're thinking, okay, this guy is on the cusp of being really great, and we're going to be a good team with that. And or maybe free agency is not going to drop our way this year, but the following year it can. I could see some merits to that, but like just a flat like trade all these guys and get them out the door, I'm not in favor of that. To me, the best path forward with Pedersen, as frustrating as it has been, and it has been frustrating, and you want to do something, I think, in this case, I think that's a natural reaction given what we've watched from Pedersen for more than a calendar year now. But I think the best solution is the most boring solution, and that is just to hold on to him and hope he figures it out. It's a bit of I know hope is not a plan, but I think in this case, hope has to be part of the plan with Elias Pettersson. If you trade Pettersson, it might take you another decade to find another number one center that can be as good as we know he can be.
How much did this season undercut the fans' belief in this team? Because last year restored a lot of luster, especially winning the playoff round. And people jumped into this season with both feet. We're ready. Canucks are back. How much did this set the franchise back in terms of ticket sales and in terms of attention spans? Like, people are a little bit, Matt and I have noticed, people are a little bit slow anyhow on the relative scale to bite into the season. It's not until December till people really get engaged. The widespread fan base. Like, are they risking pushing that farther and farther, especially if they get off to a mediocre start? Like, how far did they set themselves back by being this bad this year?
Yeah, I mean, I think fans desperately wanted to fall in love with that team, and I think they have a soft spot in their hearts for these players that they've watched grow up, players that the Canucks have drafted and developed, Pedersen, Hughes, Besser, Demko, and they finally put it together last year, and people absolutely fell in love with him again. We're so starved for a winner in this city. And you're right, it all came together, and what goodwill, and people were so excited about this season and seeing what they could do. And yeah, I think a ton of that goodwill is gone. Fans are absolutely, infatuated with Quinn Hughes. What a season he's had, and what heart he's shown. And yeah, I just think it's a situation where people just want to see a winner, and however they can do that, the fans will be back in droves the minute they start winning and start showing some signs of life again. But when they continually disappoint like this, yeah, you're going to lose. Especially the hardcores are going nowhere. They're just going to, just be completely frustrated and angry with the team, and they'll be along for the ride. But it's the casual fans that, if you're running a business of an NHL hockey team, that you've got to be concerned about, because they tune out, like you say. Like they're going to tune out when the team is bad.
Well, speaking of tuning in or tuning out, or at least buying in, the season ticket renewal poster came out, and I do call it renewal because I'm not sure how many new subscribers they're getting off this season with that pathetic home record. The slogan is all together, and the poster, and those of you on YouTube, Quinn Hughes with Elias Pettersson and Brock Besser, unrestricted free agent. Rob, are they telling us something about their offseason plans featuring Besser and Elias in this poster, or is it just the marketing and season ticket department not necessarily in perfect harmony with the hockey operations department?
Yeah, I guess they didn't. The marketing department didn't call Patrick Alvin on this one. I guess. Yeah, I don't know what I chalk that up to the marketing department throwing. Who are the guys that I don't know, the guys that have been here a long time that are
big names.
Part of
the guys people love, especially Besser and Hughes and.
Yeah,
to a lesser extent,
I chalk it up to that. I mean, I suppose you could have put Thatcher Demko on there. Maybe it would have ruined the symmetry of the photo, having a goalie in there. I don't know. Maybe you should have just stuck with Quinn Hughes, and then it would have just been it would have just worked. How ironic is it that the slogan this year, and we talk a lot about slogans, I know, together. How ironic is it that the slogan this year was, what is it? All in, all together, all in. And of course that it comes in the Miller PD fiasco season.
They were trying to manifest it. They were trying to manifest it. And
at the time it was a fine enough slogan. Kind of reminds me of Unfinished Business, though, like in retrospect. Remember Unfinished Business, and they're like, the Boudreau team that didn't just, they almost made that great run for the playoffs. We got unfinished business, and then they come out the next season and just go on an epic losing streak to start the year and get booed off the ice in their home opener. So
the good segue here, because putting a player on a poster that doesn't end up showing up happened with another team, of course. And there was talks of class action lawsuits because of it.
As we transition to Roberto, the football guy.
Yes. I don't think there's a class action lawsuit if Besser doesn't suit up in the opener, but we digress. Pedro Vite, the poster boy, the original one here, as we get set for the semifinal of the CONCACAF Champions League. They didn't dare put any Miami players as they promoted the Whitecaps versus Miami. But it's what everybody's thinking. Do I invest? And the question there, too, is, how much do I invest in this match, knowing Messi may or may not play? It's going to be fabulous theater in and of itself, never mind the match.
I find myself wondering, would Lionel Messi show up to a beautiful outdoor grass pitch in East Vancouver overlooking the North Shore Mountains at the P&E? I think he might.
I think he probably does.
He might.
Yeah.
But that's a story for another day. But people are going to be people were skeptical the last time, but people are going to be very skeptical this time. Like, will Messi show up? Will he snub Vancouver twice? in less than 12 months, that would be unbelievable. It would be such a bad look.
In a
But
cup
if you-
semi. Like,
Yeah.
come on.
If you have any respect for this tournament, you have to at least put him on the plane to Vancouver. Like, even if he doesn't play, or even if you just keep him on the bench and you play him if you need a goal in the last 10, 20 minutes, even if you just wave to the crowd, that would be more than what they did the last time. Like, people were really upset. I remember last year, we have somebody on our staff from our social media team is a diehard soccer fan, and he lives in Toronto, and he bought a ticket to Vancouver to see Messi play.
Yeah,
like, just to see Messi play. Like, he was just going to do that. And I think that he wasn't the only one. I'm sure there was a lot of people that made plans and
from all over the world, Rob.
Yeah.
They came from all over the world, and of course the irony being is that if he shows up here, this is for a CONCACAF Champions Cup, of which there is nowhere close to the commercial investment or activity vis-a-vis Lionel Messi and MLS, right? Like, MLS amended all its rules, put all this money, Apple bought and started on the basis of Lionel Messi. Like, there was a commercial interest for MLS and Apple to have Messi come here and play in Vancouver, and yet still it didn't happen. There is very little comparative commercial interest in CONCACAF, and yet I agree with everyone. I think he's more likely to play here than he is than he ever was.
I will say this: like, if Miami shows up with with keeping all their stars home as they did last time, and last year they came in and still won the match. Like, this year's Vancouver, these are not the last year's Vancouver Whitecaps. Like, they'll embarrass them. Like, the Whitecaps are an absolute juggernaut this year. I hope the city of Vancouver gets behind this team, because this has been an unreal start to the year, and what an opportunity for the Whitecaps right now. The Canucks missing the playoffs. The floor is theirs now to, I think, recapture the imagination of the fan base and bring people back in. And getting behind, if you want to see a winner, like, hey, look, they're showing all the signs so far.
And in a window where the Canucks are either struggling or, in this case, not playing. And this has been before the Caps many, many times before. Yeah. And so will this time be the Carpe Diem spot?
But, if nobody shows up, last time, it almost felt like the Whitecaps team sagged. Like, even the players felt like the game had lost its energy because of who wasn't there. And it was just a regular season game, in and out of conference game, which means even less than playing a game like the Portland Timbers. So everything was decreased. Nothing gets decreased here. This is a semifinal. And if they want to downgrade their team to the Whitecaps' benefit, there's a real benefit to the Whitecaps winning that match that wasn't there for a measly regular season match. So
winning
I think
the tie, and of course going on to play in the
for
Cup
a trophy,
final. Yeah, which would be cool. Rob, awesome stuff. Thank you for this. Appreciate you morphing into Roberto the football guy. Give our best to Chelsea in the background. All right, and we'll catch up next Thursday.
Good stuff. Thanks, guys.
Secure Price from the historic Wall Center, where you turn game night into a game weekend. Book your stay here at the Wall. Call 604-331-1000. Ask for the Secure Price rate. Some blackout dates apply based on availability.
Good thing we only had 3 single-serving bottles of bogey juice with us yesterday on the course.
It was a bogey juice kind of day on the scorecard at Northlands, but the sun peeked through the clouds just as we were at one. Just never a bad day at Northlands.
The whole point is,
even when the scorecard isn't.
If we had brought a birdie juice concoction, nobody would have drunk anything.
No.
We did get to sip on a bogey juice because we were so terrible. And you are likely in the same boat. So why not get some unbelievably yummy bogey juice in your golf bag? Apple, ginger, and top shelf vodka, making for a great shot or cocktail, depending on your taste. Bogeyjuice.com for more info. Use the promo code SP15. You'll get 15% off bogey juice just in time for spring and summer, and just in time for your game. Bogeyjuice.com.
Well, the bad news for Blake Price is that he only has one more week to run up the scene points with the Safeway My NHL picks. The good news is that we only have to suffer one more week of Blake bragging about how great his Safeway My NHL picks are.
I think
so.
If it was any longer, they would have just signed over the deed to the company to me. That's how much hay I'm making with my Safeway NHL picks. Go check it out. Rack up your Scene Plus points. It's never too late. You can still get a ton of Scene Plus points, even signing up today. Download the app and make your picks for the week to come. Here's what mine look like. I think there's a hangover effect. I'm taking the Avs over the Canucks here tonight. The Golden Knights over the Kraken as the Golden Knights continue to sharpen their blades for the postseason. The Wild and Flames is a derby tomorrow.
Come on. I mean, Minnesota gives up all those goals to San Jose. Let's root for drama and intrigue. The Flames getting
Their
closer.
Stars are back. I'm going Wild over the Flames, who suffered a big loss yesterday. Winnipeg easily dusting the Blackhawks. And I think the Canucks find their gumption again on home ice. I think they muster a win over the Wild on the weekends.
Yep. Well, we've mentioned it a couple times already. The Whitecaps with a late goal from Tristan Blackman to forge a 2-2 draw at Pumas and advance to the CONCACAF Champions Cup semifinals and dates with Inter Miami and hopefully Lionel Messi. Poetic justice that the equalizer comes after Pumas tries to waste time with the player stretchered off the pitch only to hop to his feet on the touchline. Sebastian Berhalter with a spinning back heel goal for the ages to open the scoring. Caps under siege from there, but Takaoka did his part in making some huge saves, and the Caps advance on away goals and will host the first game of a two-leg tie on April
24th. Thursday, April the 24th. People got all up in arms because AC/DC's in the window. Oh, no. Are they going to be forced out playing a New West secondary? I saw somebody suggest the Albion gravel field will host Lionel Messi. Maybe he's more comfortable on gravel than artificial turf. No, 22nd to 24th was the window. AC/DC's on the 22nd. They'll tear it down in a day. And the Whitecaps versus Miami on the 24th.
Yep.
Their league game on Saturday in Minnesota has been bumped a day to the 27th. So, no, they're not going to play twice in 3 days.
So karma here for a lot of soccer fans in our community that, you know, if Miami's taking this tournament seriously, that Lionel Messi will finally make that appearance at BC Place. We can only hope. It is still the longest trip in MLS, and one suspects a massive crowd at BC Place if that's the case. Let's hope the Caps have learned their lesson on ticket pricing and marketing because they're still not able to control whether he plays or not. So I'm not sure you can put him on the marquee, give him top billing to promote the game.
Tickets on sale on Friday. Mm-hmm. So we'll find out then what the pricing is at.
And the remarkable Cap story continues, made more improbable by the injuries. 6 players missing last night, including guys who would start: Gall, Nelson, Atakube, Laborda. Tigres versus Cruz Azul in the other semi, so we're guaranteed an MLS versus League MX final. You got to hand it to Jesper Sorensen.
It's been an unbelievable run.
I mean, they were... From what I saw last night, Blake, and I haven't seen every minute of the Whitecaps this year, but last night they looked on the back foot as much as I can remember them.
They're exhausted.
There were long stretches of the match where they did virtually nothing in possession on the Pumas side of the pitch.
It's the last thing
they
needed
did enough
with the congested schedule and then going to altitude. Mm-hmm. That was the last thing that this group of really like 11 players that Sorensen wants to lean on. Like Badwall coming in late was that shows the confidence that Sorensen's got in Badwall to put him out in this sort of an environment. They need some of those guys back. Of the 6 injured players that you talked about, all of them have been pronounced to be like 2 weeks away as of about 5 days ago. Not all of them are going to be available. Somebody's going to be, there's going to be 1 or 2 or 3 guys that their 2 weeks turns into 3 to 4. But you would hope that half of those guys are back.
Well, and particularly Gault.
For the opening leg. In particular,
Nelson,
Gault.
and Laborda, too.
Here's the thing, too, about Messi's participation. Not only is it a semi and there's a trophy on the line, you shouldn't take it for granted anyhow. If the Whitecaps were just on a heater in this tournament, if through 7 games so far in MLS play, Matt, they were 3-4, 3 wins, 4 losses, you know what? There'd be a good case to be made that they would say, we're going to be fine. Send everybody else up.
They beat them last year without any of the stars.
Right. With the Whitecaps 5-1-1 out of the gate, if you're Miami, you cannot roll that dice.
They have your attention.
You cannot come back down 2-0, maybe even 3-0, because the first place team in MLS drubbed you on their home pitch. Like it would be heavily scrutinized, not only by Vancouver fans, most obviously, because they want to see Messi here. It would be heavily criticized by everybody in soccer. Sorry, you're sending a watered-down crew to the top team in MLS
for a semifinal
cup game. Like it would be widely criticized. So I think there's a high level of confidence while no guarantee.
Yeah. Also, staying with soccer locally, Steph Labey, Olympic hero, is out with the Vancouver Rise, the new women's professional club, replaced by Robin Gale. More bad news for the Seattle Mariners. They beat Houston last night thanks to 5 RBI from Randy Arozarena, but they lose second baseman Ryan Bliss to a torn bicep. He goes on the injured list, so no Bliss, no Robles. I mean, part and parcel of what Seattle was trying to do was create great speed on the base paths with both Bliss and Robles being terrific runners. Alas, that's not going to be the case. Jays beat Boston. They're going for the sweep, the 4-game sweep at Fenway. Kevin Gossman, outstanding, striking out 10, allows just 4 hits over 8 strong in a 2-1 extra innings win. And the Vancouver Canadians get multi-hit games from 4 different players, including Arjun Nimmala, the star shortstop, pitching prospect, the best pitching prospect for the C's, or for the Jays with the C's right now. Fernando Perez allows no earned runs over 4 innings. They win at Spokane 8-4. Reminder, Tuesday, the home opener at Nat Bailey Stadium, 7:05 first pitch versus Eugene. Get your tickets, 604-872-5232 or CanadiansBaseball.com. Women's World Ice Hockey Championships began yesterday in the Czech Republic. Canada starts today versus Finland. This is the next frontier of the Canada-USA rivalry, feud, if you will, after Canada, of course, wins the Four Nations tournament, then the Nations League third-place game in men's soccer. Canada is the defending champion at the Women's Worlds. A thrilling, you might remember, 6-5 overtime victory in Utica last year. In fact, Canada's won 3 of the last 4 Worlds and 4 straight rivalry series, so the pendulum has really swung back north in this rivalry. And one-time Vancouver Giants draft pick Chloe Primerano is the youngest defenseman taken by Canada to the World Championships since your old colleague, Cheryl Pounder. She was the MVP of the 2024 U18 Worlds, the tournament's best defender there, 18 years old, playing at the University of Minnesota, made her senior national team debut in November. She was, of course, the first female skater drafted by a CHL team. This is a 4-game round-robin format for the top 5 teams. That's Canada, the USA, Czech Republic, Finland, and Switzerland, who will all make the quarterfinals, and they'll be joined by the top 3 finishers in the weaker pool. So they've played with the structure there a little bit to eliminate some of the horrible blowouts and make sure that all the best teams make it, and in a bracketed format where Canada should play the U.S. in the final.
Yes.
A amazing night in the NBA where Luka Doncic scores 45 points in his return to Dallas with the LA Lakers as they get a victory. The crowd, to say the crowd was firmly on his side, it sounded like a Lakers home game, or at least when Luka had the ball. You know how normally they announce visiting players in NBA arenas? A guard from Slovenia, Luka Doncic. They gave him the full, and now at guard from Slovenia. The place went bananas. The crowd cheered him tip to tail. Every bucket. Dirk Nowitzki, franchise legend, is in the luxury suite cheering him on. And the crowd starts to chant, "Fire Nico," as the Mavs general manager, Nico Harrison, watches from the tunnel. Blake, in this day and age, it takes, with tribalism being what it takes a whole lot for a home crowd to turn and cheer for a visiting player like they did last night in Dallas.
Can you imagine being a current Dallas Maverick?
Oh, or Anthony Davis.
Anthony Davis, who was back in the lineup.
He was.
33 minutes, 13 points, 11 rebounds, 6 assists for Davis. But, this wasn't some people made the argument that it was needed for the progression of the Mavericks, what have you. It's not like it was a gun to the head trade. We've seen players traded away in sports because of the situation that the team was in, the player was in contractually, that gun was to head, beloved player had to be traded.
Yep.
Wasn't necessarily the case here with
because
Luka
he
Doncic.
wanted out, because of free agency, because there are all sorts of...
I can't think of another time where a player was surprisingly proactively traded like this and then welcomed back with such open arms.
Yeah, and good on the fans there for understanding what this was and what this wasn't. Luke had tears in his eyes as he ran out to the introduction and said post-game he wasn't sure how he was going to be able to play the game, that the emotion was coursing through him so acutely. Surrey Mitsubishi poll question results from Wednesday asked you, should the Canucks extend Pius Suter if he costs $5 million a year on a 4 or 5 year deal? Yes or no? The people said 1,600 votes here.
I think people said yes.
No, they said no.
Really?
58% said no. Give you 3 examples here, which I think gets off both sides of the ledger and the middle ground. WMG. $5 million a year over 5 years is not an overpay, considering he can effectively play 2C, 3C on the wing, has high hockey IQ, is an excellent penalty killer. He's a Swiss Army knife. The Canucks should be looking to move out Bluger and have a spot for Ratu next year. Malcolm, 0 chance. Got to find the next suitor. This would be a terrible deal. Ryan, that's a bit too much, but with each passing day, he's worth closer and closer to 5 and more. With the higher cap, 5 might not be that bad. Yeah. Talked about it yesterday. It's a good debate. Errors and omissions from yesterday's program and beyond. I'm going to call myself for earlier in the week. I said the Caps needed a win or a better than 0-0 draw last night. That's true.
To survive.
But for the sake of clarification, yes, 1-1 would have put them into extra time. 2-2, obviously, on away goals got them through.
Yeah.
Anything to self-report? Anything in the inbox?
Nothing to report. No.
All right. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Appreciate you spending some time connecting with the program. Please do subscribe to all our assorted channels, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcast. Follow on social. That's X, Insta, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, and Blue Sky. Live on many of those platforms, noon Pacific time weekdays. And, of course, support the community sponsors you hear us talking about. Keep it local.